Hello everybody, it is Steve, your friendly neighborhood lawn gnome. Welcome back to another video over here on That's Comical. And if you're watching and it happens to be a Wednesday, happy new comic book day. Well, here we are. I am finally here to get in front of a camera and talk about the latest offering from the Marvel Cinematic Universe. The final theatrical release from 2023, and definitely one of the more hot-button topics in entertainment in the past year. So of course that is The Marvels, featuring Brie Larson, Teyonah Parris, Iman Vellani, and Samuel L. Jackson. So this movie was one that was announced when the big Phase 4 and 5 sizzle reel popped up right around the time that theaters were finally opening again, starting with Black Widow as a theatrical release. And there was definitely a lot of excitement because people were just excited to get back to the theaters. But now, taking a look a couple years later, knowing that almost every single one of the releases that was in that sizzle reel has officially been out in theaters, people are definitely making their voices heard on the current state of the MCU, as well as the current state of the comic book film. And the future does not look good. And I, for one, am on board that train for many reasons. So, The Marvels is a movie that I did not see in theaters. It was one that I had the opportunity to see in theaters, but when you don't have that many opportunities to go to the theaters, you have to choose wisely, and you want to make sure that you have a good experience. Now, granted, my experience that time was not the greatest. It was the newest Disney canon classic, Wish, but I'm not going to ramble here. So, Disney Plus had officially announced that The Marvels was coming, and knowing everything that I knew going into this movie, I was actually anticipating to despise this film because of everything that was being said by so many people. After watching it, I gotta admit, I expected a hell of a lot worse. There are still some films in the MCU that will rank below The Marvels, but The Marvels really doesn't get very high up. I would probably say that this film is better than Thor: Love and Thunder and Iron Man 2. And that's it. Everything else is above The Marvels. But for the reasons that I didn't like this movie, no. It's not because of the fact that it was a female-led cast of characters. No, it's not the fact that the cast was very diverse with a lot of people of color. There's no misogyny involved. There's no identity politics involved in my thoughts. The reasons why this movie is not good is because it's poorly executed, it's poorly written, it's poorly directed, it's poorly produced. Everything that was involved in putting this movie together, outside a couple of things that I personally want to mention, this movie turned out to be a very badly produced and executed film. There was a lot of potential here, and every minute that I was watching this movie, I was saying, why are we going in this direction when we could have gone in a much better direction that made sense? The idea behind these three superpowered individuals, Captain Marvel, Monica Rambeau, aka Photon, and Ms. Marvel, coming together, getting introduced to one another, and trying to work together as a team, there's definitely some fun to be had. I mean, my wife actually liked this movie a little bit more than me, and she called it a superhero chick flick, and I definitely see that. There were definitely some moments there that made it feel like a Mean Girls or a Bridesmaids, and those are movies that I like. So it just could have gone in so many different directions that would have made it much more entertaining and much more fun. I honestly have no idea what Samuel L. Jackson is doing in this movie, because this was better than his performance and what he had to work with in Secret Invasion, but not in this one at all. And I mean, Samuel L. Jackson has had so many great scenes as Nick Fury in all the MCU films already, and this one, not really so much. I will say the best part of this movie, without a doubt, is Iman Vellani. Now, Ms. Marvel is a show that I did watch. I didn't like the episodes in between the first and the last, but I always liked her, because I think that she is very talented. She is so charming. She is such a joy to watch, because you can see when she's on screen, even when she doesn't have much to work with, She's always got a smile on her face, and those eyes that you see from her are basically saying, I'm having a freaking blast because I'm in a Marvel movie. I'm working with great actors. I'm working with people that have been in this universe for over a decade. So I love her. I think she's great, and I would love to see her in more Marvel films because I also appreciate some of the things she said off camera. While all of these people were basically saying it's men's fault that this movie didn't make any money, and meanwhile the opening weekend the larger percentage of the audience happened to be white men, of course, white straight men as a matter of fact, so there you go. But she said it's not my fault that this movie is bad, it's Bob Iger's fault. Bravo! Because that's the truth. It's not the actors' faults at all. People like Jake Lloyd, who got basically blacklisted because of Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace, it's not his fault. It was George Lucas's fault. Come on. Think about it. The actors get what they have, and they gotta work with it the best as they possibly can. And that's what Iman Vellani did. And at the end of the movie, I'm still excited to see her in other films because I like her. I think she's wonderful, and I love her as Kamala Khan. I truly do. Honestly, Brie Larson was not horrible, and Teyonah Parris was fun too. I think all three of them did work well with what they had. They definitely have gotten the raw end of the stick, and I really feel that they had the potential to get a lot better things with rather than what they were offered. And yes, the Marvel Universe, even with all of this failure in 2023, is not entirely dead. So there's definitely more potential. But, I mean, when you take a look at all the movies that came out this past year, The Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, a diverse cast, strong female leads. What's the difference? Great script, great director, great execution. Marvel's is not that. The only reason why I really wanted to see this movie is because I heard about the post-credit scene. And the post-credit scene does set up the Marvel Cinematic Universe for something really exciting, going down the road of the multiverse. But once again, another big problem with this film is, if you didn't see WandaVision, and you didn't see Ms. Marvel, Kevin Feige said you didn't have to watch those television shows. Yeah, you do. Because Kamala Khan's family, you didn't get much from them in this movie. You got so much more development from the TV show. Same thing with Monica Rambeau. Tons of development in WandaVision. They do explain who they are and why they're here, but just in a very small amount of time. So, yeah, right. So much for just watching the movies and totally getting everything. Even Goose didn't have a way to redeem this film. Although we definitely, my wife and I agreed that the way that everybody got saved from the Saber space station was one of the most ingenious ideas, especially with a certain song that was played in the background. So yes, there were some moments that were enjoyable, but the movie as a whole had a lot of issues. I first of all heard that this movie was supposed to be a little over 2 hours long, and that because of the poor test screenings, they had to cut a ton of the film just to prevent people from leaving theaters if they were going to see it, because you'll sit down, you watch it, and it's done before you know it. Yeah, this movie's just a little over 90 minutes. So you can tell that from a production standpoint, there was a lot going on in a negative sense rather than a positive sense, and you don't want that, especially from Marvel films. So now we're heading into 2024 and 2025. They keep saying it's going to be quality over quantity. Well, as far as I'm concerned, we're really off to a rough start because I've already watched Echo. I also heard the big news this past Valentine's Day, finally revealing the cast of Fantastic Four. I'm excited for the movie, but I am very much in the camp as the large amount of people who are excited for this film. I'm not on the Pedro Pascal train. I think that was a poor casting decision. Just because he's the it guy of the hour does not make him a great Reed Richards. I agree with a lot of people saying, why didn't you just keep John Krasinski? I'm sure he would have done very well with the rest of the cast that was announced. I personally think that if Pedro Pascal was cast for Fantastic Four, I think he would have been a much better Doctor Doom. But that's just me. But the Marvels, to a certain degree, sets up the next Marvel movie that's coming out this year. and it's Deadpool and Wolverine. I'm excited for that movie. Even if the movie is going to be subpar compared to its two predecessors, I don't think that Ryan Reynolds is going to disappoint as Deadpool. The fact that they got the entire cast back, the fact that Hugh Jackman is back, and the fact that they're anticipating a ton of surprises. But again, it's going to tie into another Marvel Cinematic Universe television show, another thing that we were told we didn't have to be connected to. So, I don't really know how the rest of this year is going to turn out, and I don't know how the rest of Phase 5 is going to turn out considering what happened with Jonathan Majors. But I'm upset about the fact that there is this thing like superhero fatigue being mentioned and comic book film fatigue being mentioned. The fact that I'm not very much excited for the future MCU films as well as the future of James Gunn's DC universe. So it's upsetting to know where we were and where we are now, and there is a possibility to redeem it. It can be a phoenix that rises from the ashes, but it's all going to be based on the higher-ups and who they get to make these movies. Regardless of who you cast in these movies, you've got to have a good team around them in order to make a truly great movie for box office glory. And the Marvels didn't become one of those. So, I'm going to be a completionist here. I am going to get this movie on Blu-ray because I have all the Marvel Universe films, and they are all connected. So, of course, I have to do it, even though it's not the greatest film. I have some really bad MCU films in my collection. So, that's just the completionist and the collector in me, because this whole story is like a comic book to me. And that means I will be watching it again. As a matter of fact, I actually have been thinking in the back of my head, maybe it's time to revisit the entire Marvel Cinematic Universe. And because of Deadpool and Wolverine, maybe I need to revisit the Fox Cinematic Universe and see those X-Men movies and Fantastic Four movies. Maybe it's time to also revisit the Sony Cinematic Universe and watch the Spider-Man movies again, because they're all seeming to be connected now. The only thing that I am hearing that I will definitely say that the saving grace for the Marvels is, this is apparently better than Madam Web. I'm not seeing that movie, and I am not reviewing it for you guys either. Maybe in about 3 years, if I'm really bored. Because I still haven't even seen Morbius yet, or the Venom films. So I'm going to be giving the Marvels 1.5 stars out of 4. So thank you very much for watching, everybody. Leave your comments in the box below, and let's discuss the Marvels. And I'll see you in the next one.